It is really difficult not to believe that some gigantic race once amused themselves in these petrified solitudes, or that we have not invaded the sanctuary of some mysterious and superhuman beings. It is said that this cavern has been explored for 4 leagues, and yet that no exit has been discovered. As for us, I do not know how far we went; our guide said 1 league. It seemed impossible to think of time when we looked at these great masses, formed drop by drop, slowly and rarely and at distant intervals falling, and looked back upon the ages that must have elapsed since these gigantic formations began. At length, on account of the loose stones, the water, and the masses of crystal rock that we had to climb over, our guide strongly recommended us to return. It was difficult to turn away our eyes from the great unformed masses that now seemed to fill the cave as far as the eye could reach. It looked like the world in chaos, nature's vast workshop from which she drew the materials which her hand was to reduce to form and order. We retraced our steps slowly and lingeringly through these subterranean palaces, feeling that one day was not nearly sufficient to explore them, yet thankful that we had not left the country without seeing them. The skeleton of a man was discovered here by some travellers lying on his side, the head nearly covered with crystallization. He had probably entered these labyrinths alone, either from rash curiosity or to escape from pursuit, lost his way, and perished from hunger. Indeed, to find the way back to the entrance of the cave is nearly impossible without some clue to guide the steps amongst these winding galleries, halls, and issues, and entries, and divided corridors. Though there are some objects so striking that they may immediately be recognized, such as the amphitheatre for instance, there is a monotony even in the variety, and I can imagine the unfortunate man wandering amongst obelisks and pyramids and alabaster baths and Grecian columns, amongst frozen torrents that could not assuage his thirst, and trees with marble fruit and foliage, and crystal vegetables that mocked his hunger, and pale phantoms with long hair and figures in shrouds that could not relieve his distress, and then his cries for help, where the voice gives out an echo, as if all the pale dwellers in the cave answered in mockery, and then his torch becoming extinguished, and he lying down exhausted and in despair, near some inhospitable marble porch, to die. As we went along, our guides had climbed up and placed wax candles on the top of all the highest points, so that their pale glimmering light pointed out the way to us on our return. The Indians begged they might be left there on account of the blessed souls in purgatory, which was done. As we returned, we saw one figure we had not observed before, which looked something like a woman mounted on an enormous goat. To one hall, on account of its beauty, some travellers have given the name of the Hall of Angels. It is said that, by observation, the height of the stalagmites might determine the age of their formation, but where is the enterprising geologist who would shut himself up in these crystal solitudes sufficiently long for correct observation? I never saw or could have imagined so beautiful an effect as that of the daylight in the distance, entering by the mouth of the cave; such a faint misty blue contrasted with the fierce red light of the torches, and broken by the pillars through which its pale rays struggled. It looked so pure and holy, that it seemed like the light from an angel's wings at the portals of the Città Dolente. What would that poor traveller have given to have seen its friendly rays! After climbing out and leaving the damp, cool, subterraneous air, the atmosphere felt dry and warm as we sat down to rest at the mouth of the cavern, surrounded by our Indian torch bearers. Truly, nature is no coquette. She adorns herself with greater riches in the darkest mountain cave than on the highest mountain top. We were sitting in thoughtful silence ourselves, Indians and all, in a circle, when we saw, stumping down the hill in great haste and apparently in great wrath, an Indian alcalde with a thick staff in his hand, at whose approach the Indians looked awestruck. He carried in his brown hand a large letter, on which was written in great type, "Al Señor Dominante de esta caravana de gente," to the commander of this caravan of people. This missive set forth that the justice of peace of the city of Cuautla Amilpas begged to know by what right, by whose authority, and with what intentions we had entered this cave without permission from the government, and desired the Señor Dominante to appear forthwith before the said justice for contempt of his authority. The spelling of the letter was too amusing. The Indians looked very much alarmed, and when they saw us laugh, still more astonished. C n wrote with a pencil in answer to the summons that he was the Spanish Minister, and wished good day to the alcalde, who plodded up the hill again, very ill pleased. We now took leave of this prodigious subterranean palace, and again put ourselves in route. Once more we wound our way round the brink of the precipice, and this time it was more dangerous for us than before, for we rode on the side next to it, our gowns overhanging the brink, and if caught by a branch there, might have been dragged over. Our two guides afterwards said that if alone they would have dismounted, but that as the ladies said nothing, they did not like to propose it. Some day, no doubt, this cave will become a show place, and measures will be taken to render the approach to it less dangerous, but as yet one of its charms consists in its being unhackneyed, for, long after, its recollection rests upon the mind like a marble dream. But, like Niagara, it cannot be described; perhaps even it is more difficult to give an idea of this underground creation than of the Emperor of Cataracts, for there is nothing with which the cave can be compared. Meanwhile, we had rather a disagreeable ride in all the force of the sun's last rays back to the rancho. No one spoke. All our thoughts were wandering amongst marble palaces and uncouth, gigantic, half human forms. But our attention was again attracted by the sudden reappearance of our friend the alcalde on the brow of the hill, looking considerably indignant. He came with a fresh summons from the judge of Cuautla Amilpas, which lay white and glittering in the valley below. C n endeavoured gravely to explain to him that the persons of ambassadors were not subject to such laws, which was Greek and Hebrew to him of the bronze countenance. If it were a consul, indeed, there might be something in that. At last our guide, the ranchero, promised to call upon the judge in the evening, and explain the matter to his satisfaction, and again our alcalde departed upon his bootless errand, bootless in every sense, as he stalked down the hill with his bare bronze supporters. As we passed along, a parcel of soldiers in the village were assembled in haste, who struck up an imposing military air, to give us some idea of their importance. Politically speaking, Cuautla Amilpas has been the theatre of important events. It was there that the curate Morelos shut himself up with a troop of insurgents, until the place being besieged by the Spaniards under Calleja, and the party of Morelos driven to extremity for want of food, he secretly abandoned his position, drawing off his forces in the night. When we arrived at the rancho, we found that a message had come from the judge prohibiting Don Benito from accompanying strangers to the cave in future, which would be hard upon the old man, who makes a little money by occasionally guiding strangers there. C n has therefore written on the subject to the prefect of the department. In the cool of the evening we had a delightful ride to Cocoyotla. The air was soft and fragrant. The bells of the villages were ringing amongst the trees, for every village, however poor, has at least one fine church, and all the bells in Mexico, whether in the city or in the villages, have a mellow and musical sound, owing, it is said, to the quantity of silver that enters into their composition. It was late when we arrived at Cocoyotla, but we did not go to rest without visiting the beautiful chapel, which we had omitted to do on our last visit. It is very rich in gilding and ornaments, very large and in good taste. We supped and threw ourselves down to rest for a few hours, and set off again at 3 o'clock by the light of a full moon. Our greatest difficulty in these hurried marches is to get our things in and out of our portmanteaus, and to dress in time in the dark. No looking glasses, of course. We arrange our hair by our imagination. Everything gets broken, as you may suppose, the mules that carry our trunks cantering up and down the hills to keep up with us in most unequal measure. The moon was still high, though pale, when the sun rose, like a youthful monarch impatient to take the reins from the hands of a mild and dying queen. We had a delightful gallop, and soon left the fires of Cocoyotla far.